everyone, and welcome back to my channel, Just Another Struggling Writer, the beleaguered author's one-stop shop for commiseration and, hopefully, inspiration. My name is Carrie Scher, and I am just another struggling writer. I've got a really fun video for you today. We've all heard of the TBR pile, to be read, the stack of books that every reader has that they promise they'll read someday. Today, I'm going to be talking about my TBW, to be written, the story ideas that have been percolating in my brain and that I hope to write someday. I'm going to be starting with the most fleshed out ideas first, including the one I'm currently drafting, and go all the way down the line to the more recent ideas, including one I just came up with a couple of weeks ago. To showcase these ideas, I'm going to be using Milanote, which is an app for creative planning and storyboarding and things, which I heard about online and I'm really enjoying using so far. They're not sponsoring this video, but if they want to, they can hit me up. But like I said, I'm really enjoying their product, so I just wanted to give them a shout. And with that, let's get started. So here you can see my Milanote home screen. It's kind of empty right now, but I do plan on using it for more to-do lists. This to-do list was from the week of the fire, and just as a little inside look, yeah, you can see everything kind of ground to a halt on Wednesday, which was the day of the fire. But I do plan on doing more of these once I get back into a rhythm. Anyway, more to the point. So the first idea I'll be showcasing is entitled Trials of the Windsong Goddess, and this is actually the project I am currently drafting. Here is my lovely little mood board that I created just for this video's purpose, but I actually had a lot of fun doing it, and I almost was sad that I didn't have more ideas that was this far along to do stuff with. So, as you can see, this is Trials of the Windsong Goddess. It is a portal, fae-adjacent, slow burn romance fantasy. Fun, right? Here's the one-sentence pitch. A woman stumbling through life dreams of a magical forest and a tree-dwelling tribe that insists she is the one who will save them from violent invaders threatening their home. So this is our main character. The person who I hit upon as the person who I wanted to be like the face of this main character is not a public figure. She is a real person. She's actually a YouTuber who I really enjoy, and I thought it would be a little bit weird if I put her face out there and then the fire happened and I never got a chance to like reach out to her and say, hey, is it okay if I use your face? So I just redacted her picture, but that's for me to know and you guys to not know. But anyway, so she is a early to mid 20s woman who I envision as being curvy or plus sized with very thick, dark, curly hair and light brown eyes. She is a event coordinator working for an event space that hosts all kinds of different events, from quinceañeras to birthday parties and engagement parties and weddings and all that sorts of stuff. So she is an event coordinator for that specific event center. And she is bi. She has recently broken up with her girlfriend who she was totally in love with, and she's absolutely devastated about it still, even though it's been a few months. And she has been suffering migraines over the last 18 months that have gotten worse and worse and worse. And her name is Cade Hammond. Then we get into the setting. So like I said, this is a portal fantasy where she starts off in the real world and then she travels to this fantasy world. And the base setting for that fantasy world is a forest. In the way I kind of envisioned it is a Technicolor forest where it's not your typical colors of a forest. I'm still playing with that idea, but I like the idea of like white trees with purple leaves, or like silver trees with white leaves, or red trees with golden leaves, or whatever, you know. I'm still playing with that idea a little bit, but I don't want it to be like just a standard issue forest that you could find in the real world. Some of the inspirations for this setting was Lakeland from Final Fantasy XIV. The expansion Shadowbringers has a setting where it's kind of got that Technicolor forest idea. And then there's also another place in Shadowbringers called Fano, which is like a city, like a village in the treetops, which is also like a really important part of my setting. The tribal village, they live in the treetops. Almost like the Ewoks, you know, they live up in the trees themselves, you know, not on the ground. And then also Rivendell from Lord of the Rings. The love interest, his name is Ijosa. He is Native American inspired. That has been pointed out numerous times that just saying a racially ambiguous brown man is not sufficient, so I will say it out loud. Now, of course, it's a fantasy, so it's not a one-to-one ratio. So as I proceed, of course, I will be employing sensitivity reads and just trying to be sensitive to, Native American customs and Native American people. But that is Ijosa. He is a magic user, a rare magic user who can tap into the magic of the wind. And this specific kind of magic relies on song. So he sings in this magic language and the wind provides the magic and does his bidding, basically. And he is just a really great person who is there for Cade as she navigates this new world and this new situation that she's been thrust into. The conflict is really about these foreign invaders who have also traversed worlds to arrive in this new world and have tried to claim it as their own. And in doing so, they've really disrupted the natural order of things. The people who inhabit this world are very, very closely tied to nature. Obviously, this main tribe that we're focused on is related to the forest and the wind, but there are also water-dwelling tribes and mountain-dwelling tribes, and they're all very, very tied to the land. And so when these invaders come in and try to industrialize things, it really throws off the balance and it's really upsetting the natural order. And in particular, it is threatening the forest-dwelling people. And that's pretty much the big stuff. Here's the metadata. It is currently drafting. I lost a lot of time. I was planning on being done with this by the end of September, but then I lost 3 weeks after the fire. But we'll see how far I get. Like I said, currently drafting. I'm aiming for a word count of about 100,000. And as for series potential, I am hoping to do a kind of a long one, 3 or more. And that is Trials of the Windsong Goddess, my currently drafting Portal Fantasy romance. Next up is the story I plan to write after Trials, which I have tentatively called Seekers of Empyrean. Let's take a look. All right, so Seekers of Empyrean is an urban fantasy featuring a secret government agency and is heavily inspired by Monster of the Week type TV shows like Supernatural and X-Files and things, where it's kind of the same formula, but it's a different conflict each time. The one-sentence pitch is a young woman is roped into the secret war between a government agency meant to police magic across the U.S. and one of its agents who has gone rogue. Here is our main character, Arceli Fonseca. She is a young woman who has known she has had magic all her life. However, unfortunately, when she was about 12 or 13, her father passed away from cancer, and then her mom, in her grief, just went AWOL and abandoned her. And so she's been raised since then by her grandmother, who has really urged her to not use her magic. And so Arceli has kind of had a rough life dealing with the loss of her parents and trying to keep her naturally rebellious, naturally adventure-seeking tendencies in check, trying to hide her magic from the greater world. The secret government agency tasked with keeping track of any and all magic users in the U.S. I have called the Department of Occult Registration and Reconnaissance. I may tweak that. As you can see, I only have the Department of Occult Registration right now, but I feel like I could add on more to that. But anyway, that's the agency, and it is shortened to The Door. This agency is heavily inspired by S.H.I.E.L.D. from the MCU and Torchwood from the Doctor Who universe. At the headquarters of The Door, you'll find training facilities for recently discovered magic users, research and development labs, and dormitories for agents who, need a place to stay. The person roping Arceli into The Door is a man named Maxwell Liu. He is an agent for The Door, and he came to work for The Door because he has the rare ability to dampen or suppress magic. And so obviously The Door has a great interest in this ability, and they specifically seek out this talent to recruit as agents so that if they encounter a rogue magic user, people like Maxwell can kind of rein them in. And he is assigned as Arceli's handler at the beginning of the story. My magic system that I've come up with so far is I've got several ideas, but the biggest one and the main form of magic requires what I have always known as a somatic component, which is a physical component. And I copied this information from the Forgotten Realms, which is a D&D setting and rule book and all that. Anyway, they have a specific rule set for casting magic that requires like physical movements, specifically of the hands, that I'm kind of adapting that idea and making it more about not just your hands, but the placement of your arms and maybe even your whole body. And I'm kind of envisioning like a Tai Chi kind of movement. I'm still playing with that, trying to get my head around how I want it, but that's kind of what I envision. Is it's not a wand like in the Boy Wizard series that shall not be named. It's not just you can cast magic willy-nilly. It's you have to move in a certain way, and that creates the correct atmosphere for the magic to be cast. So that is my magic system in a nutshell so far. And then my metadata, as I'm still in the planning stages. I do want to write this for NaNoWriMo this year, so I'm coming up to the wire, especially since I've got one I'm currently drafting. But my target word count for the first entry is about 70,000 words because, again, since I'm inspired by the Monster of the Week style TV shows, I want a long series of shorter books. Not quite novellas. I thought about novellas at first, but then I thought that it might be a little bit too short. And again, there's a lot of stigma around novellas. It's not really a big draw. So I decided to bump it up to a full novel length, but still on the shorter side so I could keep with that original idea of the Monster of the Week that I had. And that's pretty much it for Seekers of Empyrean. And those are the only two I actually have full storyboards of. Next up, we have what I am calling Almost There But Not Quite, which is it just needs a little bit more refinement before I'm ready to say they're ready to be drafted. We go into those, and the first one is called Daughters of Necessity, and I actually was drafting this one earlier this year and late last year, but I was pantsing it, and I am not a pantser. I am a planner by nature, as you can see. And I was like, I'm just gonna wing it. I'm just gonna pants it for the first time. And I hit the 20% mark, and I just hit a wall. I could not, for the life of me, figure out what was going to happen next. I had a lot of ideas, but I tried drafting several different versions of the next part, and it just wasn't working out. And so I eventually decided to take a step back from it, let it go back into the chamber to kind of regenerate and get some of its life back. What I plan on doing is a full planning stage of this particular idea, so it has time to really develop, and I'm not just winging it, because obviously I'm really bad at it. Anyway, so that's titled Daughters of Necessity. It is a sapphic adventure fantasy in a post-apocalyptic setting. The general idea is that two childhood friends reunite as adults and must team up to find a cure to a plague that ravaged their kingdom 20 years ago. One of the main characters is Sorrel. She is an apprentice magic wielder raised in a tower by her mentor, never being exposed to the horrors of the outside world. And basically she was adopted by a sorceress who took her and put her in a tower to protect her from the plague that was killing everyone. So she's been stuck there pretty much for the last 15 years and is really sheltered. On the other hand, the other main character is Bryn. She was best friends with Sorrel as young children before Sorrel was taken to the tower, and she lost pretty much her entire family and everyone she knew to the plague, and she's been just on the run fighting for survival ever since. She's kind of a rogue, kind of a thief, definitely a survivor, a little rough around the edges, but she is overjoyed to reunite with Sorrel until she realizes just how different they've become as young women. And together they must travel across the plague-ridden land to find a cure for this plague and bring their ravaged country back to its former glory. Next up, we have Border Towns, and this was the first story I ever wrote a complete draft for. And actually, that's almost a lie because I didn't actually complete the draft. There were bits and pieces that I just skipped because I was having trouble with it. But I did, in scare quotes, complete the draft. I wrote the end. And to this day, this has been the only story that I actually have completed a first draft on. But I went back to revise it, and I realized that it was so rough around the edges. It was so raw. It needed a significant overhaul before I could really move on with it. And so I decided to kind of put it back again, put it back in the tank, let it revitalize itself a little bit. But I keep coming back to this idea over and over and over, no matter what I'm working on. This is the one I am certain will be my debut if I ever get this far. I just feel really passionate about it. Anytime I imagine myself querying an agent or actually getting signed, it's with this book. And it is tentatively titled Border Towns, which is a political high fantasy in a world where massive but immobile titans are the rulers of their own sovereign nations. And how they do that is they designate what I have called an emissary to serve as their eyes and ears and voice throughout the wider land. How these emissaries are designated just depends on the Titan. Our main character is an emissary of a Titan who passes down the title matrilineally. Whatever, from mother to daughter. She has come into the role earlier than anticipated because her mother was injured in a kind of a street riot on the streets of their enemy's capital city. And it's a big point of contention. War between these two realms have been raging for decades, but it is presently kind of in a bit of a lull. But one side, even though one side is petitioning for peace, our main character's side, the other side is firm that there will not be peace, that the war will continue. And again, the main character it's her job to kind of resolve this issue, especially since her mother was grievously injured and blinded in the crossfire, and the Titan that she serves has basically bid her figure out a way to end the war, or we're going to stop piddle farting around and just bring our entire force to bear against them. And she doesn't want there to be war. She knows that there are good people on both sides. So she's trying to find a way to prevent that from happening. And she meets the emissary of the enemy side and they fall in love. And so she's battling these conflicting emotions of loyalty to the Titan that she serves and her heart and her feelings, and the fact that she knows that war is not what in everyone's best interest. That's Border Towns. Next up, we have what I have lovingly titled The Nexus. And The Nexus is a complete unhinged mess of characters, storylines, and genres with an astronomically high word count. I have planned for 9 POV characters across 6 different storylines and featuring genres of fantasy, sci-fi, horror, and romance across all these different storylines. And the basis for this idea came from an idea that I was really intrigued by, which is a villain is just the hero of a different story. And I got really, really fascinated by the idea of a story where there's so many characters and so much going on that even the reader can't tell who is the antagonist of the story. And so that's kind of where I approached, how I approached this story. I had kind of a reservoir of unused character and story ideas, and I just pulled all of them into this web to try and make it really, really complex and convoluted on purpose to obfuscate who the real villain of the story was. And I know in my heart of hearts that this story will never become published unless I become a mega successful author, because it is just a mess. I anticipate it being probably 300 or 400,000 words long, and no, I will not compromise on that. I will not split it up. Again, the 9 different POV characters, the 6 storylines featuring things like were-dragons, not werewolves, were-dragons, elven eugenics programs, a magical university, time travel, evil empires, and again, an antagonist who doesn't realize that they're the bad guy. I've been drafting this at different points. I'll start it and then I'll stop it because of the different storylines. I'm not married to one particular story, so I can kind of jump around and write what I feel like in the moment. And that's kind of in the back burner of when I need something like a palate cleanser to write or I'm not feeling super inspired by whatever I currently have in front of me. I'll just go and I'll brainstorm or I'll write a few chapters of The Nexus, and that usually gets my creative juices flowing to get back into what I'm actually working on. Again, I know that this will never see the light of day, but I can't help it. I just love it so much. It's really just my fun project, again, that I just use to have fun with and get distance when I need it for my other projects. And lastly, in this category, we have a story that doesn't have a title. I've just kind of called it the Pillarverse. And this is about a goddess who is struck down from her home among the clouds and lands in a village at the foot of a pillar-like mountain, stripped of her powers and memory. Meanwhile, a veteran of a distant war, recently returned to the village himself, tries to reconnect with his estranged young daughter. Elsewhere, a young orphaned boy living in the abandoned off-limits part of the village works to uncover the sinister machinations of the local temple. And this is told from those 4 perspectives, and it's all located in this very small village, which is isolated from the rest of the world, up in the mountains at the base of this pillar. And it is upon this pillar that the people in the village say that the gods are, live, and that is what their religious is based around. And we come into this story where a man has recently returned after leaving the village to go off into the wider world as a mercenary to support his family. And he's come back to a daughter who hasn't seen him in years and has really come to resent his leaving in the first place. Then the village is rocked when this woman suddenly appears from nowhere. No one knows who she is. It's a close-knit community, so it's a little bit strange. And also, people have been disappearing mysteriously, which again, in such a small, close-knit community, has really rattled people. And that's all I have for this one, other than I really want John Boyega to be the face claim for this one. He's just been in my head as the main male character for this pretty much since its inception, and I won't budge on that, no matter how long I put off writing it, no matter how old we get. So that is that, and that is all for the almost there but not quite category. Lastly, we have all vibes, no plot yet. And we have 5 in this category. First is one I have tentatively titled Shards of Silver and Glass, and that is going to be a action-adventure fantasy featuring a female treasure hunter and a male librarian. Think gender-swapped and platonic The Mummy dynamic, where you had Rick and Evie. Kind of like that, but again, gender-swapped and platonic. And basically, the female character is hunting down a certain treasure item in a certain mystical location. She has to steal a artifact from this library where a young man who has kind of become disillusioned with his role in the library because he's been passed over for more favorable positions. Anyway, so they team up, and he leaves with her out of the library to guarantee that the artifact will be returned when she's done with it. And they just go on a fun little adventure. And that's all I have for that one so far. Then I have what I am calling Game of Thrones inspired. It's a political fantasy where a king and a woman who he regards as his soulmate, secretly get married on the eve of his much publicized wedding to a political ally. So he actually gets married twice in 2 days, but no one knows about the first one. But on the other hand, he never actually consummates the second marriage with the political ally. And years go on, and eventually the second queen, the public queen, finds out about his real marriage, and she kills both the king and the woman he's actually married to in order to consolidate her power. However, the daughter of the king and his actual wife escapes the slaughter and has to travel across the nation trying to find the 3 witnesses to her parents' wedding, which will prove that their marriage was legitimate and she is the legitimate heir to the throne. So that's that one. Then I have another portal fantasy where a thief of magical artifacts and a princess who wants nothing more than to shed her birthright team up to save the prince's betrothed from, something evil, while pretending they're not falling in love and discovering whole new worlds along the way. I don't really have much more on that. Then I have, as you can see, gender-bent Pride and Prejudice, but with elves. And that is literally the whole idea so far. So take that for what you will. And then lastly, this is the idea I just came up with a couple of weeks ago, and it is actually sort of a spin-off from my current work in progress. I'll get to that in a minute, but the general idea is that a goddess in training or some sort of high priestess, maybe the future avatar of the goddess or something connected to the divine, falls in love with a young man who has been training since childhood to be her bodyguard. Their union would displease the greater powers that be, cosmic included, who then contrive to keep them separated. But the pull between them is too strong, and there are forces at play that no one can possibly imagine. And this is really heavily inspired by the manga and anime Tsubasa Reservoir Chronicle, which, if you're familiar, is a amalgamation of the manga team Clamp's works. In Tsubasa, the main characters are Sakura and Shaoran from Cardcaptor Sakura, and there are other characters that are pulled from Clamp's other works as well. And they just pulled in all these great characters and just spun it around and told a brand new story. And that is, I really, first of all, I love Clamp's art. I think it's just so beautiful. You can tell I'm a millennial. But anyway, in the anime, they travel to different worlds and they are going around collecting certain things. And I don't know, I just really loved that idea. And so this idea is kind of based on that, but drawing in elements from my current work in progress, Trials of the Windsong Goddess. So I don't know if that would ever get written in that current kind of base form, or if I would come up with completely new characters, or if I would just go for it and write a spinoff of my own work. But, you know, that's kind of where that's at. That's later down the line. It's like I said, I just kind of birthed that idea just a couple of weeks ago. So obviously it needs some fine tuning. And that's pretty much everything on my TBW list for now. As you can see, I've got a lot of writing ahead of me if I ever want to get any of these books published. Which one was your favorite? Which one should I tackle after Seekers of Empyrean? Or should I just come up with something new altogether? Let me know in the comments. Until next time, friends, leave your comments and questions down below, and as always, like and subscribe. Bye!